You've seen Springsteen live, haven't you?
Just one time, although I think when I was in London, I think he played at Hyde Park at one of those big concerts they have in the summer.
So, but how close were you? Because my main question is he as sweaty in real life as he appears like in photographs?
Oof, yeah, they make that. They make him seem like a sweaty guy, huh? Couldn't tell you. No, I was.
You weren't close enough to get sprayed.
No, it's like it's strange because it's a football stadium, so you're sort of looking across at the other side and craning your neck back to look at in the like what we call the end zones. I think I was about 50-yard line, so I was kind of in the middle of the field. Great seat for football, not necessarily a great seat for a concert. But the energy is huge.
So when you went to see him, was Courtney Cox in the audience?
She was not. She didn't jump on stage. This must have been 2003-ish or something like that. So this is 20 years after she's done that video. Which is,
right, okay. So this is she was too big for big parts of videos at that point.
Hello, and welcome to the Two Real Cinema Club. My name is Andres Lorente.
And I am James Ruzicka. Every episode on the Two Real Cinema Club, we watch two movies. We watch a new movie and we watch an old movie, and we try and connect the dots. Earlier this year, so we started the year with a film about a famous American musician. We're getting to the end of the year, we're approaching Christmas, and we're going to do it again. We have watched the Springsteen movie. You know, I've got a problem with the Springsteen movie, which is I continually forget what it's called.
Yeah,
I had to write it down in my notes here. So it's I think it is Springsteen : Deliver Me From Nowhere. Does that sound right?
If you mean : the punctuation, yes, not actually : the whole word spelled out.
Springsteen's : Deliver Me From Hemorrhoids. We are comparing it to a film about a different kind of singer, but a film which features quite extensively in that Springsteen film. We have also watched 1955's Night of the Hunter. So we're going to compare A with a very different B tonight.
I kind of want to see that other Springsteen film that you referenced with the title there. It's anatomical, but probably a valuable thing to study. As
we're all getting older, yeah, the colonoscopies approach. You're right. So, I mean, this is like a trend now, isn't it? Clearly, somebody somewhere has noticed that there is money to be made from biopics of successful pop and rock stars from the 70s and 80s, because we've just had I feels like a torrent of them. We had like Elton John fairly recently, and Freddie Mercury same year, about 2 or 3 years ago. We've had Bob Dylan this year, Elvis like last year, Johnny Cash a few years ago, Tina Turner. We had even the Brits haven't been immune. Ian Curtis in Control. I didn't see that.
Oh yeah, that was a while back. Yeah,
Robbie Williams as a chimpanzee. I think it was last year, wasn't it? 2 Spinal Tap films, not 1 but 2 Spinal Tap films.
Yeah,
and then like just this week, I don't know whether you've seen this. I saw the trailer for the new Michael Jackson biopic. They are unstoppable.
Oh, that was on my list of biopics to make. Michael Jackson.
I can only imagine at this rate, in 2 years' time, we'll have like a trilogy of films about Jethro Tull and a lavish 26-part television miniseries about Marillion.
Yeah,
that we're going to be scraping the barrel of 70s and 80s bands, I think, before too long.
I wonder if people should die before we do the films, though. That's maybe there should be a rule. You can't do it when they're still alive, because they might change everything and become someone totally different, and then your biopic has less meaning.
But these 70s and 80s rockers, they have really good doctors. So, we won't be making those films for another 30 years or something. Mick Jagger is going to make 120.
Oh, my God, yeah. At this rate. Oof.
So, Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, directed by Scott Cooper. I had to look him up.
I did too, yeah.
I don't know about you. I have not seen a single one of his other feature films.
No, and he goes back a while. He goes back maybe 14, 15 years, I think.
Yeah.
And was an actor as well, I guess. Oh, I have seen Crazy Heart. That's the one that shocked me, was that he did Crazy Heart, which is a Jeff Bridges film with Maggie Gyllenhaal from 2010-ish or something like that. So
okay, all right.
I remembered that one, and it was decent. It was decent. It was a really, I think it hinged on a great performance from Jeff Bridges.
Hard to go wrong with Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, exactly. The others I hadn't seen at all, no.
Out of the Furnace, Black Mass, Hostiles, Antlers, The Pale Blue Eye. So, this is his 7th feature film, and they have all utterly passed me by.
Yeah.
And cast this time round, I was trying to figure out where I'd seen Jeremy Allen White, who plays Bruce Springsteen before, and it was only after walking out the film I realised he's the guy out The Bear, isn't he?
He's the guy in The Bear. And I actually remember him, there was an American remake of Shameless. Oh. So he plays one of Frank's children on Shameless. And that's, I think, where he sort of came to the attention of the American audience anyway. Yeah. So he's Bruce Springsteen in this one, the boss. He's the boss in the restaurant because he's he's the head chef. He's the boss in this film.
Typecasting again.
Yep.
Okay, so do you want to start out by telling us the story of Springsteen : Delivery from Nowhere? I'm going to keep milking that gag until we stop laughing.
It starts with a brownie that goes down into Bruce Springsteen's stomach and proceeds to the colon. There's a camera inside the brownie, unbeknownst to Bruce. No, I'm not going to do that.
Springsteen probably has enough fans that would pay to watch his colonoscopy.
Well, I think that's you mentioned that earlier. Like there's sort of this resurgence of biopics about musicians, and I think I kind of answered my own question. I think they realize the reason, in part, they get released while they're still alive is because you've got the audience.
Yeah.
Now, for the Springsteen audience and the Dylan audience, you've definitely got an older segment of the populations that are fans of their music. But you've also got some younger folks too, so you get a wider audience. So I think that's what it's just about, cashing in on someone and in their lifetime, and the artists themselves probably do pretty well.
Yep. Got to pay the rent.
Yep. This is based in part on a Warren Zanes book, which I think is also called. He's written 2 books about Springsteen, is what I thought. Directed by Scott Cooper, as you said. Jeremy Allen White plays Bruce Springsteen. Another Jeremy, strong Jeremy, as John Landau, and Odessa Young plays Faye, who's a love interest. I laughed when I saw David Carmaltz playing an industry agent, because he does the same sort of thing on this show. I've been watching The Studio, and it just seems like he's very good at doing those roles, but it's not a lot of range in the last couple things I've seen him in. But all the same, it's entertaining. The film opens in 1957 New Jersey, where a childhood version of Bruce Springsteen enters a bar to summon his abusive alcoholic father to come back to the house where his mother's waiting. She actually is waiting in the car. I think it's probably easier to have a child go collect you from a bar than your wife. Oof. And she probably would have suffered consequences such as the behavior of Daddy Springsteen. Story quickly jumps to a 1981 concert and the climax of Born to Run. And there's a lot of sweat in that scene. It's true. We were talking about sweat earlier, I think, maybe. Perspiration, whatnot. Despite the current success of his record, The River, and a massive tour that brings him back into the rock and roll limelight, Bruce is at a personal crossroads and needs to do some things differently, both for his songs and his soul. Springsteen returns home to New Jersey to rest and re-energize in a rental house on the water, do some low-stakes jamming concerts with old friends at his local nightclub, and perhaps start a new relationship with Faye, the younger sister of a high school classmate. Constant intercuts of 2 films, The Badlands and The Night of the Hunter, and maybe a third film, sort of this film that he concocts through his memories of his childhood and his violent and unavailable father, hint that there's something far deeper and darker haunting the boss. Bruce sees something of himself and his youth in Badlands and inspires him to do what any other wealthy rock star would do. Go immediately to the local library to do some microfiche research on the source material for the Terrence Malick film. Songs for the album Nebraska literally come out of the film and the bedroom in Bruce's rental house. He's back, rougher more independent, and either happier or less sad than ever. Especially when he gets the requisite first kiss on a merry-go-round with Faye. Do you guys say merry-go-round or carousel? You can do both.
Yeah, merry-go-round.
Oh, good. Yeah. Okay, we say both, I guess. But Bruce also remembers a day his father let him skip school to go watch The Night of the Hunter, which might resemble that Springsteen youth even more than the Badlands. Will Bruce write an album of songs inspired by murderous youth in the West? Will he write an album about a murderous evangelist who tortures children while invoking the teachings of the Bible? Will he sacrifice artistic integrity and re-record the Nebraska songs, or release them as they were recorded in a bedroom? Just guitar, harmonica, and an occasional glockenspiel. Will the filmmaker try a bait and switch and make the film about something completely different in the final act? And will Bruce and his dad linger in a backstage, age-inappropriate, come sit on daddy's lap moment full of healing, forgiveness, acceptance, and cringe?
Almost spoiler-free.
Almost spoiler. I know. I had to spoil a little bit, because I think it makes the show more interesting for the potential audience. Trying to get butts in seats here. Butts on laps, or butts in seats, I guess is what we're trying to do.
It's butts doing something with butts.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're ringing the spoiler bell in a moment. In a moment, but I have got I've got sort of one main thought about this film, which doesn't spoil it. Yeah. Which is just, and you are a much more accomplished musician than I am, certainly. So you will know better than me, but I've read a little bit about like mixing a song, basically. So when you are a record producer, you're mixing a song, so you have to pay attention to all the different frequencies in the music. You have to pay attention to the bass, because you know that different speakers will reproduce that bass very differently depending on where it's played. You need to make sure that you've got your high frequency sounds, your kind of cymbals and your hi-hats. So you've got to cover the whole spectrum with your kind of palette of sound. But the real danger zone when you're mixing a record is that the part of the music that makes it sound boxy and gets easily kind of clogged up and too busy are the mids. And that, I think, is my one-word review of this film: mid. Yeah. I came out of this and I thought, well, that was pretty mid.
It was very
I thought
mid.
It was fine. I was broadly entertained for 2 hours, but I did not come away feeling like this was a film that needed to be made.
You're very kind. Mid. Yeah, it is very mid. It's a very good review. Do we keep talking about it, or?
Well, turns into a kind of a mid review of a mid film. I mean, the problem is, should we ring the spoiler bell?
Yeah.
Even though there's big spoiler, folks. Bruce Springsteen records and releases an album, but we'll ring the spoiler bell, and then we will kind of talk about the small waves of change that his life goes through.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Imagine that we are in a very high. We're in the Power Station, which is the New York studio, which is run by apparently Mark Maron.
Yep.
So this will be probably the finest spoiler bell that you will ever have heard.
Make it a
stereo.
Make it a glockenspiel, please. Do the glockenspiel thing.
Spoiler glockenspiel coming up. Now that was a big glockenspiel.
That's Bruce does big. He's not small with the glockenspiel.
So I've kind of written here. The first thing I've written here in my kind of thoughts is that one of the big problems of this film is that nothing very bad happens.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's and it's based on a real life, and the real life of somebody who is not only still alive now, but also presumably cooperating very deeply with the making of the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Springsteen has had his difficulties and his challenges, and I'm not going to downplay people who have a struggle with depression and mood disorders. But, he has a bit of a difficult childhood. He's a little bit lonely, but he has a manager who's supportive and helpful and kind, and he has a girlfriend who thinks he's great, and he has the money to rent a nice house and just buy a car straight off the lot. And for all we like to feel like our artists are tortured, nothing tremendously bad happens in this film. And that, I think, is sort of part of its failing.
Yeah. There's also there's very little tension, and I think I think this goes along perfectly with what you're saying. There's one scene they're recording, and I can't really. It looks like they're recording Born in the USA, but they keep talking about Nebraska, so I think they're actually kind of working on Nebraska. And the Mark Maron character's there. It's was he Chuck Polkin or something? I forget the name of that character, but the engineers are there. Jeremy Strong, who's sort of his manager, I guess, is also there, and they're just about to argue about artistic integrity or something like that. Bruce is at odds with some people in the studio, and then Jeremy says, "No, stop. Let's not have this conversation," or something like that. So, like, the one moment, it's about halfway through the film, the one moment where there's like almost tension, we're going to see maybe something throw across the room, some breaking glass or something like that. Nothing. It just ends. He squashes the entire moment, and for me, it was just indicative of the film. At that point, I was just like, "What? I've been waiting an hour for something. This almost happens, and then you take it away from me." So yeah, it's mid. It's mid.
Like most of these musical biopics, it does shine during the songs, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, the session where they record "Born in the USA," which is clearly not for the album Nebraska, and when I'm pretty sure that counts as his most famous and recognizable song, doesn't it?
Probably, yeah.
It's probably the first thing that most people would think of. It's a great scene. I did a little bit of background reading. I think they've gone to extreme lengths to try and accurately reproduce that session. So all the instruments are the correct instruments that they really played it on. I think this is the real studio where they recorded the song. I don't know whether they recorded it all in one room without any sort of sound isolation between each other. I don't know, but I mean, they've tried very hard to make it as authentic as the dramatization will allow. And it's, and it reminds you what a great song it is. And it's very enjoyable to watch, the actors perform this song. And that's great. And in the same way that you have a little burst of Born to Run right at the early part of the film.
Yeah.
Or, when you see them playing live later on, the little snippets of them playing some small gigs in the Stone Pony, this local bar. When you hear Springsteen recording some of the songs into his Porter studio that end up being on the album Nebraska. Those are all very enjoyable. It's not tremendously different to watching a pop video, but those are enjoyable moments in the film. All the connective tissue in between these musical performances is just a little bit too mid, though, isn't it?
Very much, very much. Well, I mentioned it in the synopsis. I don't think I need to see Bruce Springsteen go use microfiche in the library. But that's about how exciting it gets. And he's, sitting around reading a book in a rental house. And these are great little insights into the personal side of Bruce Springsteen. But in terms of a movie, it's not the most exciting stuff. And the music here is, immediate comparisons to A Complete Unknown, which is really fictionalizes a lot of Dylan's life with his permission and focuses on sort of one time period where he's making this big change from acoustic to electric. And this gets a little convoluted because he's a really big star at the beginning of the film. He's just released The River, and he's even a pretty big star before that, but we're led to believe that he's really, really not really down and out, but it gets down emotionally perhaps, and not as big a star as he actually was at that point. So it becomes a little bit unbelievable, or maybe it's just too believable in the sense that, okay, he buys a car, he drives, he goes to talk to people on the sidewalk. And it's just some of the bigger moments and some of the things that could have been fictionalized. I hate to say that, but that's what makes the story interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think there's just not enough of that here. And in fact, I think I wrote down pedestrian at one point. It's a very functional script. It's full of exposition. We're learning things about Bruce Springsteen that we kind of already know or can easily imagine, and it's functional. Yes, it tells a story. It tells a very kind of straight up bland story that it's just not that interesting. And the funny thing is that Bruce Springsteen's energy and music is incredible. And I think even though it's in there, the energy's not there. And it's also ironic because the guy's a great storyteller. He's telling stories about people's lives, and I think if they'd sort of try to explore that a bit more, it would be more interesting. But it's just not super engaging material, and that's a shame because the man is.
And it feels kind of very literal as well, not in the sense of being literary, but in the sense of not being tremendously sophisticated or mediated. I mean, when they are trying to discuss or explore the writing of the songs at the mansion on the hill, he remembers his dad taking him to look at a mansion which is on a hill. I mean, it's very. It feels a little bit unsophisticated. Yeah. I don't know exactly how much input Springsteen had into the film. I don't know whether he feels either that there is something about his myth or his legacy which he wants to protect, or whether he feels that actually this does seem like a reasonable portrayal of the era as he remembers it. I think a lot of it looks great. I think it comes across looking pretty cinematic. There's lots of kind of blues and oranges. There's a scene towards the end where, after having had some very enjoyable dates with Faye, Springsteen tells her, "Well, yep, I'm going to go and move to California now."
Yeah.
And she is like sitting on the orange side of the restaurant, and he is sitting on the blue side of the restaurant, and it seems like he's in a cold spot and she is in a warm one. And it's a little bit sort of literal and overstated, but it's beautifully photographed. It has got that real kind of sort of late 70s. Sort of golden hour tinge to a lot of the cinematography. So I like the way that it looks. I think they are broadly good performances, but I think the characterization overall is a little bit, I think you hit it on the net, it's just a little bit too polite to leave any tension on the screen. Yeah. Which means then it's just not fun to watch.
Well, yeah, and the scene you just referenced should be a super emotional scene. And it's not. I don't think it's not written particularly well, and we don't have enough invested in their relationship. We know that Bruce Springsteen's not invested in the relationship, so they pass. They have a couple moments, but there's not a whole lot of quality time spent on that relationship, and as a result, I wasn't invested in the relationship either. Yeah, he's going to break up with her. He's even told her earlier that he's kind of non-committal, and that the music is the most important thing. And it seemed very thrown together. He meets up with her on the sidewalk with his high school friend, who is the older brother of Faye, and there's not a lot of magic in that relationship. It's nice. I mean, I guess he gets grounded a little bit. She has a daughter, and she's a single mom living with her parents. So it's a very real story, and it's nice because I guess in Bruce it shows that he's very down to earth still, and isn't above relationships like that. But it's no one's invested in it. I don't even think the writer or the director Scott Cooper's invested in that relationship either. So it's tagged in there, and again, that might be the thing you cut out to focus on something else. Maybe that wasn't the most important thing. And, there's this one. He has this eureka moment right after that when he's moving to LA. He's going with a buddy. They're driving out. And he's sitting in a restaurant and he just says, "She was right. She was right." So he has this eureka moment. I guess he's talking about Faye and that, he's not a good bet or he's got some other issues that he needs to address. But it's a lot of setup if that's the moment you want to get out of that relationship.
Yeah. It's interesting that you observe that Springsteen is down to earth. I mean, he is kind of down to earth insofar as he doesn't mind playing these little gigs with his buddies.
Yeah.
But he's also down to earth insofar as he can go and buy a great car for cash.
Yeah.
And yet isn't prepared to spend $5 on some new earrings for his short-term girlfriend.
Yeah.
I feel like he feels appears to feel no guilt in hanging out in the cafe where she works and sort of complaining at her that. His life is so hard, and he's got to write these songs when she's working her life to the bone to support a baby. So I agree. I didn't come away feeling like I had a great deal of sympathy for Springsteen and the way that he sort of rather taken her for granted and then dropped her to go somewhere sunny.
I think this plays into my biggest pet peeve with the film, though, is that I think moments like that in the first couple acts of the film, I think we're supposed to see things that I don't really see very clearly. I think we're supposed to see that he's down, he's depressed. It's not his fault. I mean, he's inheriting something from his father. And it's not layered in there very well. I don't think it's very strong. And then all that means that for the third act, we're supposed to totally buy into this complete change where he's suddenly sort of ready to address his depression and his sadness. He gets to LA and immediately has therapy and starts crying. And then all of a sudden, it's a very different conclusion we're supposed to take away from the film. And I think the problem is in the first two acts, you're really invested in these two albums that are sort of coming out, and his artistic integrity, which he won't compromise because he wants to ultimately not recreate Nebraska songs in the studio, but actually release them as he did the recordings in his bedroom on a 4-track machine. And that seems to be like the big issue, his artistic integrity. So the depression is kind of in there. There's this one moment where he's listening to a record by, is the band called Suicide?
Yes.
He's listening to that. It's totally morose. He's hanging out in this rental unit all by himself. So we're given a couple like heavy drops, but it's not really the point of those first two acts, I don't think. And then all of a sudden it becomes very important in the third act. And I think it's just, I mentioned it as a bait and switch in the synopsis, because I felt like all of a sudden I was watching, or at least I was either watching a different film or taking away something completely different from what I was taking away for the first hour and a half of the film or so.
I mean, I think it's supposed to come as a revelation when he has these kind of, has like a panic attack. He keeps seeing like Faye and then his father and then his childhood self at this kind of fun fair that they stop at one evening on the journey out to the West Coast. Yeah. And I was sort of prepared to accept, okay, when I was thinking that Springsteen was just sort of moping around and being a bit self-indulgent, actually he was depressed. Yeah. And he's just kind of sort of realizing it now. And suddenly he kind of has a bit of an anxiety attack and kind of realizes, no, I really can't sweep this under the rug anymore. Yeah. Actually, that did feel sort of believable. Yeah. But I agree. I think, the seeds had been planted, fairly sparsely to lead up to that moment. And I did feel a little like that, that panic attack felt a little bit unearned. Exactly. It was like, oh, well, we need to have something happen now to move us into the conclusion of the third act. Yeah. Let it be this. And
look what comes out of those seeds too. Almost nothing. You get there's the therapy session. He cries. He realizes something. 10 months later comes up on screen. 10 months later. So there's not intensive therapy. What's that like? Is he using medicine? What is he doing to try and overcome this? It's like, and again, this film avoids conflict like someone avoids the devil, I suppose. It's like it doesn't want to go into those. It wants to introduce you to those depths, perhaps, but it doesn't want to go there very much. It doesn't want to go into any tense places. So as a result, that whole, I don't know, I call it the third act. I don't know if it's even 30 minutes. It might even be like 15 minutes or something. Yeah, like 15 minutes. It's fast. It is, yeah. And that's supposed to be the main takeaway. And at that point, you're spanning, I guess that's after Born in the USA. So it's like a 5 or 6 year storyline if you excise the whole youth sequences, all the black and white stuff that's shot in youth. It's just a 4 or 5, 6 year period. And he immediately steals 10 months from us, and then nothing happens afterwards. Or I think maybe some of the interesting stuff is in those 10 months. So that's why it's very alarming that it just disappears.
Yeah, it's like those 10 months have been sort of photoshopped out of the picture, haven't they, really?
Yeah, and there's a lot going on. He's moved to Los Angeles. I'd love to see what that's like. This is an East Coast guy. This is a New Jersey guy living in Los Angeles, closer to his parents for a while. I think they're living in the same state, the same city for a while. It's all sorts of stuff that they could have explored, I think, but there's something like this aversion to do anything that has tension or deeper interest. So it's very mid. It's mid. This thing's mid. Yeah.
It's kind of you've already kind of alluded to it. It's quite a lumpily shaped film as well. I think that moment of recording Born in the USA, I think that happens chronologically almost exactly in the center of the film. Yeah, yep. And I think that is probably intended to be sort of the midpoint. It's like a sort of a turning point where everyone, like everybody in the studio, all the engineers and the producer, and whatever, they're all they're nodding away, like it's a little bit sort of like acting 101. The director is saying, show that this is great material and you're pleased. So they're all looking at each other and nodding like mad. Yes, this is a great song, Bruce. Yes. And like up until then, you've had this kind of, introductory first act, which I think leads up to the buying the Porter studio. Then like the first half of the second act is just, Springsteen strumming some songs and watching Badlands and trying to figure out what the album is going to be. Yeah. And then really the second half of the second act mostly seems to concentrate on the technical issues of cutting a record correctly. Yeah, so they sort of spend an awful lot of energy worrying about equalization and compression, and then finding a different mastering engineer who will put a little bit less pressure on the needle as it cuts the wax. I mean, it's just a strange thing to focus so much of your dramatic attention on.
It's one of the most cinematic segments too, I think. Yes, but then I forget what song they're playing. A completely different song from a different era at that time. It's just I was very confused by the music because you're under the impression that they're recording Nebraska, and then all of a sudden Born in the USA comes out of it. And then at the very end, there's a surtitle saying that the songs that he actually wrote at the New Jersey Getaway rental were actually Born in the USA songs, which you take from the film that's mostly where the Nebraska songs come from. And it's just, it's convoluted, and it doesn't have to be convoluted. That's an odd part of the film.
It's probably worth talking about opening and closing images. Insofar, so it opens with there's this subtitle, like New Jersey 1957, and it's like the opening thing that you see is the young Springsteen on a bike in black and white, like going home, and then the scene where he has to get his dad from a bar. And I was trying to figure out, are they saying this film is about Bruce Springsteen trying to go home? Or are they sort of suggesting, you can't go home again? Or is it like they're trying to suggest that it's about Springsteen making a journey from adulthood to childhood to adulthood, something like that? I wasn't entirely sure exactly what that opening image was trying to set out. And then I think the closing image is even more confusing insofar as the last thing that we see is that Springsteen on his own on the pier where he has previously taken sort of Faye and her daughter out for kind of fun or a date or whatever, and he's kind of looking at the ocean, I think, and then he walks away from the camera, and it's like is the film trying to say that he was a boy and now he's a man, or he was on a bicycle and now he's walking? I don't quite understand. He's on his own 2 feet now. I just don't really quite understand. I feel like a slightly more thoughtful film would put more effort into how those opening and closing images sort of match up, whereas it feels a little bit arbitrary.
Yeah, I think that final image is in New Jersey, though, and that's probably not clear to everyone.
So I think right. So that's so it's almost like him going back.
Yeah, it is. It's much closer to your original idea that about going home. And if anyone's gone home, it's Bruce Springsteen. I think he probably still spends a lot of his time there. He's an absolute hero for New Jersey, a champion of it, and I think that kind of is the story. I think, and going home actually is kind of like going to your past. I think a lot of the trauma, we're supposed to get this out of the film, and the films within the film, I think a lot of the trauma of childhood is there, and you sort of have to go home to that trauma in order to get through it. And I think eventually the relationship with the father is better because their father has been diagnosed, and he recognizes his mental illness, and there's this inheritance, I think, of both trauma and mental illness going on in some way.
Right.
So I think there is a lot of going home and reconciling yourself to home. I think that's the theme. But the last thing you knew, he was living in Los Angeles. So he might be on a pier in Los Angeles somewhere, in California somewhere. I took away from it because I think we did see that earlier in the film, that he's sort of back in New Jersey, and he's still sort of scowling. He doesn't seem very happy to be there. But I think it's that he can go home, and maybe home is the best place for him.
Okay. I mean, I wrote down in my little box here for themes, I wrote, I think the main take-home message that I learned from this film is that as long as you have an established music career with a best-selling album, a manager who will support you through everything, a production team who will go to the ends of the earth to make the record sound the way you want, and a label that says yes to everything, then you too can have a number 3 hit album. Because it does feel a little bit like Springsteen is just surrounded by an absolutely great team who do absolutely everything they possibly can for him. Yeah. And so as a result, it all works out. Well done, Bruce. I do, on a slightly more serious note, I think there is like a sort of like a wrong-headed idea at the heart of this film, which I think it shares with many other musical biopics. And I think the idea that's wrong is that there is usually an interesting story to tell about the creation of an artistic work. Yeah. When actually the artistic work itself is the thing that contains the ideas. Like, it reminds me of something that a friend of mine once said to me a long time ago. He said, what's amazing is that Shakespeare is such a big literary figure, and yet we know so little about him. All we know is that he left his wife his second best bed in his will, and he lived in this place and he lived in that place. And actually, there are very few facts that we know about him. We don't have any letters or anything that describes what he thought about things. And the counter to that is, well, we don't know anything about Shakespeare except for all those plays and poems that he wrote, which are absolutely crammed full of ideas and thoughts and reflections. And and actually, probably we know an awful lot about the way that Shakespeare thought, because it's all in the plays. And I feel like a film about the creation of a artistic work, it feels like kind of gilding the lily. Yeah. It's like, Nebraska it's a melancholy album sort of about deprivation and violence and alienation. So we don't need to have someone spell out that while he was writing the album, Springsteen may have been reflecting on his experience of deprivation, violence and alienation. It's like it's already there. It feels like the whole movie is sort of a tautology. It's it's talking about the thing that's already available there that you can buy on CD or listen to it on Spotify.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's already there. It's already mid. I have to mention that I thought, and there are two scenes that actually kind of are important, or at least play into the story that the director eventually wants to tell. But there are these two scenes with Landau and his wife, I guess. That's Jeremy Strong's character, that are among the worst scenes I've ever seen in film. And not only does he do it once, he goes back and does it again later on. And they're sort of talking about, oh, something's wrong with Bruce, something's up, maybe he's depressed. And we don't know anything about the wife. He's just talking at dinner in one scene, and then they're drinking wine in another scene. Is she a therapist? Does she have a background? Does she feel the same way about Bruce, or is it that Jeremy's just bringing all these things up? And they go back to it later, so they're sort of interspersed in the film. There are these two scenes that they're really on the nose. Ultimately, they're basically telling me what I should have picked up on earlier. Probably was that he was depressed, but people are talking about him being depressed. But they're absolutely they're expository. They're just two characters, secondary, tertiary characters, sort of spouting their opinions on his mental health. And they were awful. They were really, really badly acted, badly shot. I was amazed that these two films, these two scenes were in there. So, whew. And there's also a lot of, there's a lot of dependence on Night of the Hunter and Badlands in this film. I'm thinking, well, why did you make this film when you're, good percentage of this film is actually made up of other films. They're doing a lot of work for him.
And also, better films as well, which is always dangerous to put in your film, isn't it? Putting clips of a much better film. Yeah. Remind the audience what they could be watching tonight instead of this. Yeah. Speaking of seeds, there is one little seed which I will draw someone's attention to, which is on that carousel merry-go-round scene where Faye has her first date with Bruce. And he asks her, who do you like listening to? And it feels like that one moment feels like a seed for a picture further down the line, because Faye looks at him and she says, Debbie Harry. And at that moment, she looks an awful lot like Debbie Harry. She has got that great sort of late 70s, early 80s blonde hair. I felt like that one moment was a little pitch by Scott Cooper saying, if anybody would like to pay me to make a Debbie Harry biopic with Odessa Young in the lead role, I am available. Here is my number.
That's great. That's probably true. Yeah.
So it's always good to put a pitch document for your next film in your current film.
Calling card, yeah. Yeah. Who is the next biopic film, or who is the next Dancer in the Dark, one might ask.
Oh, that's good.
Thank you.
We probably ought to phone the concert venue security team. Yeah,
landline. Really, these guys, you can call them a landline,
because they have their own branch of the Cliche Squad.
Cliche Squad.
This is one of the movies where you look at the Cliche Squad notebook and it's just a transcription of the whole movie, isn't it? I have sort of spotted a pattern in these sort of rock star biopics. It's so and it's a little bit like I Spy books. Did you have those? Was that a thing in the States? I Spy books. Okay, right. Yeah. So I had a whole bunch of those when I was a kid. And there's like an I Spy book of rock biopics now, and this film gets a tick for like edgy star, depressed man, lonely despite widespread adulation. Yeah, little bit of sex to show that they are sexually active.
Requisite, yeah. I always say that, requisite sex. Yeah.
We watch a couple of their most famous songs get recorded in a studio. Yeah. And then finally they face a feature that that is going to be brighter because the future contains the legacy of the record they have just made.
Yeah.
It feels like, we've ticked an awful lot of boxes in the making of this film.
Yeah, I just wrote ham-handed story beats, which I think is what you just said. They're right. Yeah, they're just right out of the biopic screenwriter's playbook, I think. But I think that, for me, hook up on a merry-go-round is or carousel. That's a cliche, I think. He just happens to have a key to a fenced-in or locked-in merry-go-round somewhere in Ashbury Park or something like that. It's just
we've all got one of those.
Another one for me, fairs. This kind of makes sense. You're inducing nostalgia when you take someone to a fair in a film, and it's just immediately getting memories of childhood. I understand it, I get it, but that is a cliche. And then fathers who teach their kids to fight.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. Yes.
My dad never did that for me, but
I have seen that scene many, many times. You're like, put your fists up, son.
Yeah, put your nukes up.
It's funny to see Stephen Graham play Springsteen's dad, because he is a pretty well-known Liverpudlian British actor in this country.
Exactly.
Presumably he's just come to everybody's attention through Adolescence, which has now become like a big hit for Netflix.
Okay.
But before that, I always felt like, he's somebody who is largely confined to UK roles.
Yeah.
And what it really surprises me is that for some reason they felt it's important need to give him a big prosthetic chin for this film.
Yeah.
So I was really surprised that scene where Bruce goes to go and rescue his dad from the restaurant.
Yeah.
Where his dad seems to be having a perfectly nice civilized time and doesn't really need rescuing at all.
Yep.
But you can tell Bruce's dad isn't well because he seems to have grown an enormous chin since the last time we saw him. I don't understand what's going on there.
Well, that's not that. And then when they're walking away, the prosthetic fat is really bad. And fat has to just move a little bit, right? It has to just have some bubble, some bounciness to it. And it's just, he's got this big, really solid tire underneath his button-up shirt, and it just doesn't work. If you're putting on prosthetic fat, it has to bounce, it has to jiggle.
Maybe it wasn't that he was developing obesity. Maybe he was just very cold and he was wearing 25 undershirts. Perhaps that's what that scene was really telling us.
If that's what they do.
Shall we have a break? I wanted to enjoy Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere. And there were moments that I did really enjoy. I did enjoy watching them record Born to Run. I did enjoy some of the songs. Yeah. I did enjoy watching Jeremy Allen White really look a lot like Bruce Springsteen in his heyday. I mean, it's a pretty good portrayal. But overall, I would say this is only a one for the Springsteen fans, but actually maybe the Springsteen fans will be the ones who are most frustrated by it.
Yeah, I think they will be more frustrated, yeah. I don't think it's for Springsteen fans. It's interesting, yeah. They'll go. I haven't bothered to look at the numbers, how it's doing and all that, but it's been out a couple weeks. Was it the 24th of October, something like that?
Yeah, I tell you what, while we have a break, I'm going to look up the figures because I should have done that before we started recording. Let's have a break. We'll wipe down some of the sweat which is now spilled all over the stage floor here.
Good point.
And then we'll come back and we'll talk about the movie within the movie. We'll talk about Night of the Hunter. And we are back from one movie about a singer with a fairly troubled family life to a different older film about a different singer whose family life makes Bruce Springsteen's family seem like the Waltons, really.
Yeah.
So we have watched Night of the Hunter. Quick update on the Springsteen business. So budget of the movie is quoted as $55 million. Current box office take as of 9th of November, $33 million. Seems unlikely that it will recoup on theatrical release, but it'll have legs, I expect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll make the money back one way or another. In album sales. Ooh. So we have watched Night of the Hunter, 1955. I had never watched it before, Had you?
I had seen,
you surprised me not. You're always more cultured on these things.
It wasn't that long ago. I think it was, for most people, I thought probably 10 to 12 years ago. It's when you suggested it, I had some misgivings because I didn't remember it fondly. But after having seen, what is it called? Deliver Me from Nowhere.
Yes.
It makes sense. I mean, God, it's the two films are related, so I will.
I mean, they go to great
it
pains to try and convince you of that, don't they? During the Springsteen films.
I love your comparison to The Family Life because and I love the Waltons too. So anytime someone just says the Waltons, it puts a smile on my face. So,
I mean, there's kind of two movies which are featured heavily in Deliver Me from Nowhere. Badlands for the first half of the film, and then Night of the Hunter for the second half of the film. I'd be interested to know what their rights arrangement was with getting scenes from Night of the Hunter directly spliced into the Springsteen film. I can only presume that there must be some financial compensation. And it's a brave thing for any filmmaker to put footage from other great films in your film.
I agree. When he does it with Badlands, it's like Bruce is watching at his house, right?
Yeah.
On video or something, or it comes on late night television or something. And then for The Night of the Hunter, the premise there is that his father keeps him out of school so they can go watch the movie. I think I pieced that together, right?
Yeah, I think so,
they're in the theater watching it together. So you're sort of seeing it play in a big old theater.
So having never seen it before, did do a little bit of research. This, interestingly, is the only feature film that Charles Laughton ever directed. So directed by Charles Laughton, it's a great actor of the early Hollywood golden age.
Yeah.
So he won an Oscar for playing Henry VIII in 1933. He was in the 1935 version of Mutiny on the Bounty.
Yep.
And the film is based on a book, which is also called Night of the Hunter, by, is it David Grubb?
Yes.
Basically an agent sent galley proofs of the book to producer Paul Gregory. He'd done a bunch of theatre work with Charles Laughton.
Yeah, Laughton's a theatre guy originally, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember being shocked that because I recognized his name, and I remember being shocked when I saw him as the director. I didn't remember that from the first time I saw it. And it definitely it feels stagey a lot of times. So
yes,
there's a lot of theatre background there, but yeah.
Yeah, so Paul Gregory loved the book, passed it on to Charles Laughton, who loved the book. There's a quote where Charles Laughton said, "It's a fairy story, a nightmarish sort of Mother Goose tale," which I think is the way that he saw it. So Laughton went to go and talk to Grubb about it. Stayed with him for 5 days. Grubb was a bit of an artist, his David Grubb's first book was Night of the Hunter. I think he'd written it like in 6 weeks. His father was an architect. His mother was a social worker, which I think is where some of the themes of the book come from. The story itself is based on a true life story of a guy called Harry Powers, who was a real serial killer. He murdered between 5 and 7 victims in 1931, luring them in with a Lonely Hearts ad. So that became the book. The book became the movie. But I think Gregory didn't want Grubb to write the screenplay, so they needed someone with a bit more experience. So they hired James Agee. So he was the screenwriter of African Queen.
Yep.
And so they got Agee to write a screenplay, and he submitted a draft, which it depends what source you read, but the draft that he submitted was either 293 pages long or 350 pages long. So he submitted. So I'm not sure how experienced a screenwriter he was if he submitted a 350-page script. I mean, the book. I did read the book, by the way. We'll come on to that. The book is only like 256 pages, I think. But he managed to get like a 350-page script out of it. So well done.
Yeah,
you certainly put the hours in. The script that he wrote is not available. It isn't published. Some of it remains in the film. Apparently, Laughton adapted it and rewrote extensively.
Yeah, I'm sure.
James Agee then, so he was a heavy drinker. He died 4 months before the film was released. He felt very bad about his work on the film. This is another kind of sad screenwriter story.
Oh, no.
So I think he was paid $30,000 for the script. And back in the early 50s, that was a lot of money. But he felt very bad about what he'd submitted and even asked to get his name taken off. or at least that he share credit with Lawton. But I think Lawton really liked Aggie and said, no, we'll keep your name as the screenwriter. Interestingly, director of photography, Stanley Cortez, he shot The Magnificent Ambersons.
Oh.
And because it was Lawton's first film, I think Cortez had to do an awful lot of the heavy lifting, explaining how cameras worked, what camera angles were, what they could achieve, what they could do. At the time, it was a commercial and critical failure. The critics hated it. The Chicago Tribune said, "Seldom has so much ugliness been put into one movie, some of it dragged in for no apparent reason." These days, seen as a masterpiece. I mean, I'll ask you what you think of it. The Cahiers du Cinéma, venerable French film magazine, in 2007, they called it the second most beautiful film ever made. Do you want to guess what number one was?
It's got to be Citizen Kane.
It was Citizen Kane, yes, of course it has to be, yes. Yeah. Wow. So, a bit of background. Shall I tell you the story? And I know because I've watched it and read it this week. Yeah. The story of the Night of the Hunter.
Please.
So this 1955 black and white expressionist Midwestern period drama. That's the box I put it in.
You had me at
It opens with a warning from a disembodied Lillian Gish floating in the sky to beware the false prophet.
Yeah.
As we then watch the discovery of a body in a cellar and the escape of murderous preacher Harry Powell, Robert Mitchum, who is talking to God and looking for his next victim. But once he is arrested for stealing a car, we watch another man, Ben Harper, arrive home from a bank robbery. He's in a panic and he hides his stolen money in his 4-year-old daughter Pearl's doll, while he makes her and her older brother John swear never to tell where it is. The police show up, they take him away. The two children are left with their mother Willa facing an uncertain future until Reverend Harry Powell arrives. He shared a cell with Ben and is now looking for the money that was hidden. So, how will the family and the community react to this sinister and outwardly pious preacher? Will John and Pearl keep their secret and keep the stolen money? Or will the evil preacher get his way and steal both the money and their lives?
Yeeks.
Film starts with these massive brass chords. It's a very dramatic sound track. Yeah. And I feel like I can hear those massive stabbing chords now every time I leave a little pause in a sentence. Almost anything I say. Do you want any more tea? Da, da, da. It's real kind of classic soundtrack. Fantastic. So you were telling me earlier that, you were implying when we were speaking earlier that maybe you don't agree that with the Cahiers du Cinéma that this is the second best film ever made. What did you think?
I do not agree. No, I have very complicated thoughts on this film. I'm going to say I think this is a pretty mediocre film. However, I think it's a film that everyone should see. And that sounds kind of weird, but and that's in part because the film is so weird that I think people should see it. And Mitchum is incredible. I mean, it's a bizarre character, this murderous preacher, but it's incredible. I do think this is a film that everyone should see. It's very much worth watching. It's not that long. It's an hour and a half or so. Yeah. But I think it's really kind of messy. It's stagey, very, very stagey at times, and then very, very cinematic at times. And the technology they're using to do some of the shots, it doesn't match well. I think they're using like a balloon or something like that for some of these overhead shots that are expansive, but then they'll cut to a rear projector shot of someone driving in a car, and it's jarring because it's this like in these days with a drone or a crane, it would look awesome, and then you'd cut to something done with mounted cameras on cars, and like the technology just wasn't there for what Lawton wanted to do. And I think Lawton is so grounded in theater that his the way he directs the actors is very theatrical, and yet he did with the assistance of a great cinematographer, he actually starts to do some really interesting things with the images, the photography, and trying to do these things that would be beautiful Steadicam shots now, but the technology just wasn't there. So it's a very strange mix of very theatrical yet very cinematic at times. Really poorly acted by a lot of people, but really wonderfully acted by Mitchum. And then Lillian Gish has a pretty small role, even though she's floating in heaven at the beginning. Very weird opening. She's actually quite good as well. But there's not a lot of acting because it's very stagey, and there are hundreds of scenes in this film. It's not a long film, but it takes forever because it's just there's so many short scenes that really don't really develop the story a whole lot. But I love a lot of what it says about America this is the 50s when America was quote great. It says a lot about, I think, there's a little dig at religion in here as well. And I'm glad you mentioned fairy tales. To me, this felt like this is a Grimm's fairy tale. And I'm going to argue that the antagonist, as bizarre as he is, he's actually not evil enough. Oh. And he's not threatening enough. They do some very weird things, and it's sort of something almost in common with Deliver Me From Nowhere, is that the tension isn't quite where it needs to be. So I've got a lot to say on it. I think everyone should see it. I don't think it's that good, though.
I think I'm going to slightly counter-argue with your performances comment. I mean, I think Robert Mitchum is great. The whole film is very stagey. That was one of the first things I wrote in my notes here. I've written... yes, this is an expressionist film. No, is what I wrote here. I mean, it does. I think Lawton really admired those German expressionist films and wanted to make something like that. Yeah. But it ended up with something which is just very strange. I've written very strange film, like a dream or a fable. Yeah. Like a silent film, like a play, like a melodrama, like a nightmare. Yeah. I do think the look of the film is incredible. It has this really crisp black and white. I mean, we watched it, streaming online. It does look fantastic, though. Really expressive shadows. There are a whole bunch of sets that really look like just painted flats. Yeah, it's very little shot on location. Most of it's shot in the studio, deliberately stagey. All the river scenes are deliberately stagey. It's clear that there's only about 6 inches of water that they're in. I think it's and the dialogue also and the performances are kind of stagey. Yeah, I do like Shelley Winter's performance in this. I think she is on record as saying that she feels this is the best film she ever made, or the best performance that she ever gave. Yeah, there is it's probably not worth ringing the spoiler bell for a film which is
70 years old.
70 years old. But there is a great scene where very shortly after she has married the preacher, she comes home and she can hear him grilling the children from outside the house. She can hear it inside, threatening them and saying, "Where's the money? Where's the money?" Yeah. And she walks in and she gives this beautiful, expressive look of both kind of incomprehension and distaste and sort of fear and judgment, and it was this very complex little performance. And I think she does a great job. I think there's a bunch of great acting, but it is stagey acting. It's not a cinematic film. Yeah. And so, it's not surprising to learn that this is the only film that Lawton made, and he was so successful and so prolific on stage because this feels like an extension of his stage work. Yeah.
I think the thing that's missing from stage is super important, though, because the scenes are pretty fast. When you think of scenes on stage are generally, much longer, talky scenes, and I think that actually would have worked a little bit better. So he's missing the staginess that he needs, because that, like her character journey, she goes from being married to the Peter Graves character, and then she's sort of chatty with the what is it, like a family, the neighbors or something like that. It wasn't her parents. I thought it was her parents, but I guess they're just neighbors who are kind of
I think so. Yeah,
with the family. There's no real mourning period for anyone. She's later murdered, and there's no mourning period for her. There's no mourning period for her husband, who's been hanged within a matter of seeming like seconds. Harry has ingratiated himself into the family where he's obviously a potential marriage candidate. It's not, all these scenes are very short and they happen over the course of 7 minutes. They're married and then not consummating their marriage all within about 4 minutes. So there's just no time for anything to grow. So a lot of the relationships that I think need to be more believable aren't believable because there's such a rush to get this story in. And it's odd because it comes in at an hour and 30 minutes. To me, it felt like a very long hour and 30 minutes, but I think it should have been a 2-hour film because I think if you given more space to those scenes, it would have been much deeper. It kind of comes off as superficial because you're just getting really quick scenes. You're getting this information you need, but there's no build up for tension either. That's the other thing. So, considering how much she goes through and how quickly her life transforms, it's hard to buy that story for me.
Right. Yep. I mean, I think a lot of the secret of why the film is the shape that it is answered by how much Lawton must have loved the book, because the film is slavishly identical to the book.
Oh, okay. Oh,
most of the dialogue feels like it is lifted straight out of the book.
Okay.
There aren't really any scenes that happen in the film which are not in the book.
Oh, wow. Okay, so he's cramming it in.
It's very, very slavish to the book. I can only presume that James Aggie's 293-page script was basically, the book, but with the dialogue kind of typed out in the center of the page instead of going all the way to the margins. I mean, it's actually longer takes everything from the book. Except there's only one thing really which is different. So he basically changes one important detail, and I think that important detail makes the film superior to the book, which is that in the film. We know very early that the money is hidden in the doll. Am I right? I think it's clear right from the beginning that the money is in the doll, and we, the audience, know the money is there, and we are enjoying the dramatic irony.
Pretty early
something
on,
that the characters do not.
Yeah.
There is in the film, you don't find out that the money is hidden in the doll until it's at the 44% mark, so nearly halfway through the book.
Okay.
So it's a mystery to everybody reading the book where the money is hidden. So reading the book, we are like the characters; we don't know where the money is. Whereas in the film, we are like the children; we do know where the money is.
Yeah.
And I think that dramatic irony makes the film considerably more tense and exciting, I think, than the book, which feels a little bit more ploddy.
Yeah, I'm glad you also mentioned dreamlike, because there's some scenes in the film that I thought were almost meant to be dreams. There's this wonderful scene where the kids are in their bedroom, and I think they know that Harry is prowling around outside. He has great access to everything. I mean, he knows where everybody is, and he can be anywhere when he needs to be there. Where you see his hat. His hat comes into shadow, I guess, and casts this long shadow right into the bedroom. This dark hat that he's wearing, and then we see that he's outside. It's kind of like a smoky night or a foggy night, and he's just watching their house under a streetlight. And it just felt like, I'm not sure that actually happened. I thought that might be a dream, because it's so perfect in the sense that, okay, he knows exactly where to go. He knows exactly where to stand to cast his shadow. It felt like something that a child would see as much larger in its danger than it actually was. So there are a couple scenes like that, in part because you're getting a lot of the story through the perspective of the children, or they're the ones who are really threatened throughout. And that's why I thought Grimm's fairy tales, because it's like Hansel and Gretel or something like that, where these kids are in danger and they're sort of working their way through the story, but they might have an inaccurate or, I don't know, almost over-exaggerated interpretation of what's actually happening in their lives or what they're actually seeing. So did you get the feeling that there were any actual dream scenes, or is it just a fairy tale that we have to suspend some disbelief in order to understand?
To me, it felt much more like a fable from start to finish. Mm-hmm. There's the sequence where the children escape on the boat, and then they spend 10 or 15 minutes on the river. There's lots of intercuts with animals, and kind of like some weird fake animals. There's this like enormous string sort of spider's web.
Yes, it's an absolute
dominates most of the frame, and it's very, very stagey again, isn't it?
Yeah, I wrote Zoological Odyssey. You get frogs, spiders, owl, turtle, rabbits,
yes,
foxes. Eventually, I remember that spider web. Gave me a great laugh.
And then there's like the scene where they hide in a hayloft overnight.
Yep.
And the hayloft and the barn is clearly just a cutout with a light behind it.
Yeah.
And they're not even trying to disguise that. It feels a lot like a stage set.
Yeah.
And then from the hayloft they see Robert Mitchum's character riding a horse over the horizon, lit by the sort of like backlit by the moon.
Yeah.
Apparently, they staged that in a studio, and they had a small person and a miniature horse.
Oh yeah.
So it's it's not Robert Mitchum on that.
There's
somebody
much
smaller.
Some brilliant images. There's also just this moon crossing the sky. I think that's in that same scene too. That is just psychedelic animation. It's crazy. I mean, that's why I think everyone should see this film, because there's a lot of very strange things happening, and the treatment of children by this preacher type. It's incredible. I can't imagine how this was made in 1955 in America. It's just it's a must-see. It is a must-see. I don't think it's a great film, but it's a must-see.
I think the way they treat the preacher, I think was very carefully thought out, because they try and balance his character with Lillian Gish's character, who is properly religious, and she reads the children Bible stories.
Yeah,
and I think they are quite careful to imply at least that he's not any kind of real preacher, and that he's it's all kind of made up, and he's definitely a false preacher. I mean that initial shot of Lillian Gish's face floating among the stars, which incidentally is that must be what David Lynch is referring to in that opening shot of Dune, which sees princess, I can't remember her name, but there's a princess who opens up Dune, her face appears among the stars, and she starts telling you the background of the story. And I'm sure that that is probably what David Lynch is referring to.
Yeah.
She talks about beware the false prophet, and I'm sure they are emphasizing that in loud, clear language to get past any potential censorship from people who will disapprove of an evil preacher in a feature film.
Yeah, he's a real bad character. It's really evil. He's one of the great evil characters in cinema. And yet he's not evil enough. We know that he has this little knife that he can pop out between his fingers and cut people randomly. And we know that he's killed some people, but it's very funny because when there's a little bit of pressure on him, he disappears quite quickly.
Yeah.
He does not persist. And I think the real moment is the climax where Lillian Gish has a shotgun at him. He's breaking into the house and threatening to get the children. And I guess they do still have the money at that point. So he wants the money, he wants the children. He's obviously willing to do anything. And she fires one shot, and he freaks out, and he runs into the barn and sleeps there until the police arrive. And the police just take him away. It's bizarre because, this is a guy who's been tracking all up and down the river for what looks like weeks to try and find the children. He really wants that money, but then when pressure is put on him, he just disappears, and he's basically a sitting duck waiting for the police to arrive. And it's just peculiar. So he'll push things, but he'll never actually take action. And there's a sort of an outlandish scene where he goes after the kids down in the basement. And the boy, I think, disrupts a shelf full of jars, and that falls on his head, and that's enough to knock him out for a while. And then he can't catch these little kids as he's going up the stairs, and then he sort of just gives up on the chase. And another point where they're just getting on the boat, I think maybe for the first time, where they're getting back onto the boat and trying to get farther down the river, and he jumps into the river a little bit, and then he gets into 2 feet of water, and that's too much. He's not going to swim after them and get them in the money. So it's odd that he's just not scary enough, even though he's saying just frightful things and doing frightful things to the children. He's not scary enough.
See, I mean, there's something very iconic, isn't there, about his accent and his Elvis haircut and his tattooed fingers. Yeah. Which I feel like I've seen sort of riffs and puns on those tattooed fingers in so many different places, and this is where they were born. Yeah, Grubb apparently said that he based the tattoos on the tattoos of a real man that he saw in a real cafe. So something which supposedly predated the novel, but this is the first time I'm guessing something like this was seen on screen. And he has this kind of, this incredible sort of disdainful body language and like his sort of drawling speech. I mean, it's a very committed performance, albeit a little bit cartoonish and funny.
Yeah.
But I wrote in my notes that I don't think he is even the most evil person in this film. Because I for my money, I think the character of Icy Spoon, which is a great name for someone who runs an ice cream shop.
Yeah.
But I think she, like this sort of busybody elderly woman who gives Willa a job and then then forces her to marry the preacher. I think she is probably more evil than the preacher, insofar as she is, she's manipulative, she is holier than thou, she is also tremendously ignorant, she is fickle, she is easily led, shameless, she takes no blame for anything. She's the one who sort of pushes Willa into this marriage. And then at the end of the movie, there is a Simpsons-like mob who all turn up to lynch Harry Powell as he's led out of the courtroom. And she is at the front of the mob with an axe in her hand. She's hypocritical and pious and rude and nosy and she just feels like one of those people for whom the world is a much poorer place. It's the sort of person where I feel disappointed I live in a world where a person like that can vote. Because I feel like that explains a lot of the trouble that we're in right now.
Yes.
I think hers it's not a deliberate evil. It's a kind of an evil born out of ignorance and laziness and nosiness. And that feels to me like a more palpable and important evil than the kind of cartoonish Harry Powell. Yeah,
it's more common. So it's a like, by numbers alone, that's a greater danger. And it's sort of the piousness, the naivete, the gullible nature, the buying into whatever a religious figure says, even though he's a snake oil salesman and a false prophet. Yeah, just buying into that and pushing it on other people. I like that. I like that take. I'm going to give it to you.
Certainly a film with a dramatic look and a film that sticks in the mind, I think. I think I will remember that. I'm never going to forget that I've watched Night of the Hunter. But it is also, to an audience in 2025, a deeply strange film.
Yeah.
And partly a testament to how outre Hollywood could be back in 1955.
Yes.
Pretty crazy, remarkable, strange film.
Yeah.
Not a success at the time.
No.
I wonder if it had been, what other films Lawton would have gone on to make.
Yeah, maybe something a little less stagey.
Well, maybe. I wonder.
It's funny that it's not stagey where it needs to be, and then it's the wrong kind of stagey very often. And it's funny how cinematic it is at the same time. This is a troubling film for me in many ways, but again, I would watch it again. I'm not saying I don't like it at all. I just don't think it's a great film, but it should be requisite viewing for even the TRCC family. Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, it should be requisite viewing today as well, I suppose, for a number of reasons.
Yeah. I mean, it was perfect for this time of year because I think of it as a monster film, really. I mean, this guy is bad news. So it is that kind of fairy tale.
In many ways, I'm sure people will try and market it as a Christmas film because it does finish with a fairly cheesy Christmas scene, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It is a peculiar drift from opening to closing again because it opens with David Lynch's Dune, and then it closes with Lillian Gish's character kind of like cooking for Christmas. There's a snowy house, and she kind of makes some sort of slightly pithy comment about children's resilience, and then we fade out. It's it doesn't really feel like the opening and the closing, even though the opening and closing lines are spoken by the same character. They do not feel closely related or connected. In my mind, it's a curious opening and closing. And
she's off screen for basically the first hour plus of the film. She's really a third act character. She only rolls
up, sort of 25 minutes from the end.
I was confused. Isn't Lillian Gish in this film? What happened to her? But there's also this. It ends kind of on a line that I don't like at all. It says, I think she says, "Lord, save little children." I think, how about decent adults protecting and saving little children? I mean, if you're waiting for the Lord to do something, that could be a long wait. And he's going to let people like Harry Cal will come down and do terrible things. So, yeah.
But then, even though the film portrays her as the responsible, kind adult, the first thing she does with the children when she finds them in a boat by the river is kind of whip them with some long grass, doesn't she? And then
a switch.
Yeah, and then she like washes them, it's not kind or tender at all. It's like she sort of scrubs them with a wire brush.
Yeah.
And then when John doesn't want to be washed and he runs off into a bush or whatever, and she then beats him. I mean, this is a very different vision of kindness to something that one might expect to see today.
Yeah.
It was strange times, 1955. I suppose it's a 1955 film about 1932 or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I can't imagine that attitudes to children were very different between those two times.
No.
Yeah, peculiar film. But I agree with you, required watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, these two films are connected, and we will draw them together, I promise. But first, as always, I'm going to force you to play Who Am I?
Who am I?
Yeah, you should answer that question first because you just said, "Who am I?"
Well, who am I? Who the hell am I? I'm definitely not Bruce Springsteen, although I do sweat a lot. And I don't really feel like anyone from the world of The Night of the Hunter, frankly.
Yeah, exactly.
There aren't any people there where I kind of like, yep, there goes me. So having watched these two films this week, I would like to think that maybe I'm a little bit like John Landau, who is Springsteen's manager.
Yeah.
Insofar as, he doesn't have very much hair. He's a bit boring. But he's trying his best to be supportive and kind. I mean, there are worse people to be like, frankly.
Great actor, great actor.
So good for him. When he has problems, he discusses them with his wife in a non-judgmental, open sort of family scenario.
That's kind of sweet.
I would like to be a little bit more like that.
Oh.
Reasonable glasses as well. So John Landau, that's who I'm going to suggest I would like to be if I saw myself on screen this week. How about you?
They're very thoughtful. That's nice. I'm going to say Chuck Plotkin, who is Mark Maron's character.
Oh, yeah.
I had a hard time finding someone too, but I just liked the fact that he was quiet, functional. He's probably right when he's suggesting maybe Bruce does something a little differently, but kind of just overlooked, right? People put the kibosh on him. He's okay, and he's not there to stir any crap or anything like that. So I thought I'm going to go with Chuck Plotkin because I've been following Mark Maron for a while, and this is my chance to be Mark Maron. So that's it. But you're right. A dearth of really interesting or characters with whom I have a real facility or likeness. No one jumps out this week. It's a tough week.
It's strange to choose Mark Maron to play.
Yeah.
This kind of, this producer who largely says very little and just rides the faders. I'm not entirely sure why they cast him.
I mean, he doesn't say anything for the first 6 appearances on screen. Something like that. I was thinking, isn't Mark? I kept saying that is Mark Maron. I think he's in this film, but he doesn't say anything. What? And then he gets a couple of dialogue scenes. There's one where he goes to see the pressing of the vinyl, which is kind of the big cinematic moment in the film. So I guess he's lucky to be in that part. But he's also just told not to argue with the boss.
I don't know whether it's just that Mark Maron expressed an interest in being in the film, and so they thought, we've got this guy who's like a well-known, very witty comedian.
Yeah.
What role should we give him?
A guy who doesn't say anything.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, perfect casting.
Right, okay, we promised we'd do it. Let's play the jingle, and we'll bring these two films together. So the best I could come up with on first thought was that I think both of these, I've written in my notebook here, both of these films suggest, and I am paraphrasing Philip Larkin here, that families mess you up. Am I right? I mean, Springsteen, he struggles with his father, and his father, we've seen more abusive fathers in cinema.
Yep.
But, they had a bit of a rocky relationship, and it was a bit tricky at home, and it wasn't tremendously harmonious. He has to witness some violence, some drunkenness, and then, rather more dramatically, John and Pearl see their father come home after killing two men and stealing $10,000.
Yeah.
Then they see their mother murdered. Then they see their stepfather executed.
Yeah.
Their lives are completely destroyed. But interestingly, like the main mover for that forces these families into tricky straits. The thing that creates the families that mess you up is largely poverty, isn't it? I think in both of these films, I think poverty is kind of the driver behind the difficult family circumstances that people have to cope with.
I agree with you. I had written down abusive fathers. Even stepfathers, you could get a bad father, you could get a bad stepfather. If you marry wrong, you can get a bad father-in-law. Bad fathers. I think that's a big theme here, and just the trauma that can come out of childhood with such a father figure. I think that's important. I actually saw quite a few things that I kind of liked. I think these films connect really well. And it's probably not a surprise because one of them is basically contained inside the other one. But, they're both really seen very much through the eyes of a young boy. So the Johnny character is he's not really listed as a lead or anything like that, but that kind of is his story because he sees, as you said, his own father gets arrested. His stepfather's eventually going to get arrested. He's got a stepfather who actually killed his mother over nothing, no pretense really whatsoever. So there's a lot of that. So I think that plays into the whole father thing. But it's also just seeing fathers from the vantage point of a young boy. For me, there's a strong evangelical theme running through both films. And I think of Bruce Springsteen as really, he's an evangelist of sorts. He's a rock and roll evangelist because he really speaks to a lot of people. And he even says this, he said this in the concert that I saw, he said, and it was George W. Bush was president at the time. Iraq War was going on. And he said, look, I know a lot of you out there have a very wide array of politics. My music reaches a lot of people. But in this moment, he was saying, I'm a liberal. I do not believe in what the Bush government is doing. So imagine what he would say now. I won't say any president's names or anything like that. But he's someone who a lot of people relate to. He's very relatable. And obviously there's an evangelical nature to the Harry Cowell character as well. And it's in both cases, it sort of comes through music. Like Cowell sings a lot in this film to the point where he does this weird seductive hymnal with Lillian Gish's character. She's sitting on her porch with a shotgun, and he's across the street hanging out at a fence, being not very threatening and singing. And they end up singing together, and he kind of seduces her into this. And there's this Pied Piper kind of thing going on in both films, I think, which is a pretty strong theme. So those are a couple of things that I thought of. And then just charisma. A character whose charisma attracts people, whether or not they want people to be attracted to them. Like, you don't get the sense that Springsteen wants to be the guy who has an entourage or anything like that. But people are drawn to him. And the same thing with this false prophet, this snake oil salesman, Harry Cowell in Night of the Hunter. He's got enough charisma where people are going to buy what he's saying. Strong, big, tall guy. Looks, as you said, Elvis-like at that point. So that's going to attract a lot of people. And I think both films have that. Both the films need that kind of character if it's going to work at all. And both of them have that. So I think The Boss is really authentic. And I think Mitchum is not authentic at all. So that's a real clear distinction. And then the last thing I thought that really brought them together, I think that both films have these bizarre third acts. And I think it's, for me, it's a problem in both films. But I don't know, it's hard to say. Is that by intention? Like, the third acts are really different from everything that precedes in both films. To the point where I thought, Night of the Hunter was over at an hour. I thought, what's going on? And I was thinking two things. What's going on? And where's Lillian Gish? And then all of a sudden that question is answered with this kind of odd tacked on third act. But, so I think they do have a lot of things in common, a couple of things that make them really distinct too. But are you getting any of that?
I am. I think there's great observations that I think one other thing in my mind that they have in common is that they both have something to say about, and feels like a Two Real Cinema Club cliche now, so I apologize to regular listeners, but they have something to say about authenticity, I think. Yep. So Night of the Hunter is trying to compare, authentic religiosity with inauthentic religiosity, and it makes it very clear. It's about beware the false prophet. They tell you that right from the start, and it's pointing out so many differences between the good religious woman and the bad religious man. Yeah, it is kind of man versus woman, young versus older. She is kind of quite small and meek. Whereas he is kind of loud and blusterous. He has a knife. She has a shotgun. I mean, so everything about those two characters are opposites, and they play that maximally. I think in a similar way, I think the Springsteen film is trying to say something about authenticity in artistic expression. Yeah. Insofar as I think he starts out being inspired by Badlands. And so the first half of the film is Springsteen inspired by Badlands, which is like a sort of inauthentic experience. It's he is inspired by seeing something on TV, which was then previously on at the cinema, which is a film based on the life story of some other real people who lived. It's an extremely mediated story. And for him to be inspired to write a song about that, he ends up writing a great song, but he is many layers distant from the real events. Whereas in the second half of the movie, he starts writing songs which are much more directly informed by his own personal lived experience. Yep. And that's when he starts coming to terms with himself and realizing, what's wrong in my life? What have I failed to address? What do I need to go to therapy for? This is kind of his journey of self-realization when he takes the step from writing songs about other people's experiences and starts writing songs about his own experiences. So I think it's trying probably to say something about authenticity and about the value of producing art that comes from you and not from something that you have seen in somebody else's eyes. Yeah. I mean, I feel like this seems a little bit like the journey of a young writer getting older. When you're a young person, you want to write things. Certainly in my case, I ended up writing things that sounded like movies that I had already seen or books that I had read. Because, when you're a young person, you haven't lived very much and you haven't seen much and you haven't done much. And you need to kind of get older and live some of your own experiences before your work can take on a bit of genuine authenticity. So I think they're, probably both exploring that in their own way. And then, and I think, going back to my point about poverty, I mean, I think they are both talking about the scars of poverty. I mean, it made me think about, families, this week, who may be going hungry because they're not getting their SNAP payments. Yeah. The government shutdown is doing something similar to the recession that kids were going through in the 1930s. Yeah. Have we, how is it possible to have homeless families, in a modern developed world? Yeah. Yet still seems to be happening. What have we learned? Not very much.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I would add, though, is that I don't think the Springsteens were well off, but I think that was a time when one, decent job, even if it's a variety of jobs over a course of years, could sustain a family. Like, I don't know if he would identify his childhood as being that poor. I think he was probably like, middle class, maybe lower middle class. But, obviously his father wasn't resorting to crime the way in Night of the Hunter, the Peter Graves character was. But these are definitely working class, if not lower working class stories. And
yep.
I think that's a theme there. I think you do have something there for sure. How the world has changed. I would love to see a Night of the Hunter coming out right now. It doesn't feel 70 years old in that sense. I mean, this is the kind of weird story I want to see in cinemas. And there's meaning there. It's an interesting film. So I'm going to say, you don't have to see the Springsteen film. But everyone should see Night of the Hunter. And it's a ride. Go for the ride. Go for the river ride. Oh my God, the wildlife on that is fantastic. And then
where's David Attenborough when you need him? Yeah.
One of my favorite scenes is when Shelley Winters is discovered in the river, right? He's killed her, but he's made it look like a car accident or something like that. And the kid's drunkle. I call him this is a classic cliche character too, is the drunkle, the drunken uncle. The drunkle
that's good.
He's fishing on the river. And he's getting caught on the car or something like that. And then he finally looks down. and clear as day in about 6 feet of water. You've got the vehicle and Shelley Winters, and her hair is just blowing in the water, floating along, and you could see clear as day. And that's not any river I've ever swum in. Then again, I swim in some pretty dirty rivers. But anyway, funny scene. So there's some funny moments in that film too, and it's a ride. It is a lot of fun actually. So see that one.
See that one. We have got just enough time to talk about what else has been playing at this theatre.
Who's going to go first?
Well, I've got something to say.
Good.
It was Halloween since the last time we recorded.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
So the other night we watched 1999's The Sixth Sense.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Sat and watched that with the children. So I had not seen it since its original release in 1999. And it's easy to forget what a mega blockbuster it was at the time. It was second highest grossing film of 1999. And at the time, the 8th highest grossing film of all time.
Wow.
I mean, it was massive.
Yeah.
The other thing, which I remember Bruce Willis was in it. I'd forgotten this. Olivia Williams,
she
Toni
is there.
Collette,
Yeah.
and a young Misha Barton. I didn't even realize that she was in it.
Oh, yes. Yeah. She plays well, I don't know if you know this, but he can see dead people. And I think she's a young girl in the hospital, right?
She is, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so she's a girl poisoned by her family.
Yeah.
107 minutes, pretty brisk, but interesting to see it now.
Yeah.
With sort of 26 years on. So 107 minutes, and you know what? It is slow.
Oh.
It's a slow burn.
Yeah.
But it is really slow. So a lot of expositional dialogue, especially in the first scene, sort of very front-loaded with a huge amount of exposition.
Okay.
And overall, it's a great ending, one of the greatest endings in all of cinema, but otherwise not very much happens.
Wow.
I reckon there is about 45 minutes of story. But it's stretched out to 107 minutes. And so much of the dialogue is delivered so slowly that it gets stretched out. It's amazingly slowly delivered, some of this dialogue. And worse than that, there are a whole bunch of scenes, especially in the second half of the movie, where the film is really, really treading water, going over the same ground again.
Yeah.
There is a sequence of scenes where I was thinking, I don't understand why any of these scenes are in the film, because none of them earn their place.
Yep.
We've learned nothing. We found out nothing. It's just more of the same, reminding us what's already happened. It's so peculiar. And there's like an A story that doesn't really resolve in so much as, at the end of the film, Haley Joel Osment can still see dead people, but it feels like an introduction to another story, really. They're like, he's the kid who can see dead people, but now it's going to be a regular series where he helps out the dead people.
Ooh, television, yeah.
It's like a pitch for a TV series or something like that. But the B story, with Bruce Willis and his wife, that is, that twist ending is so masterful. And so successful that we were stuck with a decade of movies that had to have twist endings.
That's right.
As a result.
Yes.
Yeah, so for 10 years, you couldn't make a movie without some clever twist. Oh, it had to be a twist. What's the twist? So interesting to go back to that. Yeah, interesting to see that with fresh eyes. My children had never seen it. We all sat down and watched it. I was pleasantly surprised that they both did not guess the ending and were really kind of gobsmacked by the twist.
Yeah.
So still successful. What have you seen since besides our movies this week?
Not much, really. I did finish up 2 series, so I'm actually up to date on both The Studio, which is I give a big thumbs up to, and Only Murders in the Building, which I thought this 5th season was going to be the last season, and it looks like they've got a 6th one going. So they
can never leave it. Can they?
They might be going too far now, but. Hard to say. And then I found out that a film that I made with a buddy 20 years ago had another screening at a festival, which is very funny to me. So I went back and watched
Awesome.
I went back and watched this thing called Documented. I think it's maybe 7 or 8 minutes. And we followed a woman who had no papers. She'd come from Mexico as a kid, didn't even know Mexico at all, really, because she came so young. And then she ended up having a child when she was pretty young, maybe 20 or something like that. but she was living without papers in the States. So we followed her around for a little bit, and we tried, we didn't have any technology to hide her identity, so we just had to be a little tricky about that. And it played at this festival early 2000s, so 2006, 7, 8, somewhere in there. And then my friend out there, he's out in New Mexico, he just got into another festival, so I decided to watch it again. And it's all right. I mean, it's very SVHS. So I guess we were probably using high 8 video at that time.
Wow.
Nothing special, but it for me, it was just, wow, these things just resonate because we never solved these problems. And
my goodness, yeah.
You can. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets it into another festival in another 10 years or something like that.
Wow.
So that was my takeaway there. But I've also just been watching. This would be laughable for the British audience, but we have like a low-level football team here now. It's like the American third division.
Are you talking about soccer or
soccer? Yes,
right.
Called the Hearts of Pine. I'm not a big fan of the name, but we've been selling out, and we've got a very wild fan base here. And so if you watch these games, and you can see them on ESPN, which is a big sports network here, you can watch these games on ESPN, and most of the stadiums have like 60 or 100 people watching this game. We're drawing 6,000, and we made the playoffs in our very first year.
Nice.
And so I've been watching the Hearts of Pine. I saw them live in the last couple of weeks, and then saw them on television. And tonight, after this podcast, I'm watching. They're out in Washington on the West Coast playing in a semifinal.
Wow,
so
nice.
Hearts of Pine, baby. Yeah. So it would be laughable for the crowd across the pond, but we're starting something. We're doing something. It's very nascent, but it's happening. So. Yeah.
You may not be aware, but actually this football that you're talking about is the biggest sport in the world.
Exactly, yes. And it's just, we don't have the system that you have. There are so many divisions in England, and they run down to the very small towns. And, so we finally have a third division, and we're in it. So it's kind of fun.
Nice.
It has been fun.
Awesome. Is the Hearts of Pine, is that a New England thing? Does that mean something to the locals?
It does. Well, pine trees. The white pine tree is the state tree, and it's a tree that the King of England wanted because they're huge and they were for masts and a lot of building projects. So I think he had declared, this must have been George, that son of a you-know-what. He had all the pines, like the mature pines, 1 mile from the coast from the coast and 1 mile in, they were marked as his trees.
Oh.
And theoretically, they say you can still find one of these trees. But they were harvested and shipped over to England. So a lot of lumbering, a lot of timber industry here, pines. And then I don't like the hearts part. But there was a guy who died just a couple years ago who on Valentine's Day, he would stick these hearts all over the city of Portland. And I thought, for me, I'm not into Valentine's Day. I thought, this is a waste of paper.
You old cynic.
So they put those two main legends or Portland legends together, and they came up with Hearts of Pine, which is too bad because we have all sorts of other things they could have been. So I've got a list of recommendations for them, but they're not gonna listen to me.
You just need to shout louder. Just shout louder. On Instagram and BlueSky, we are at 2 Real Cinema Club. Read the blog, 2realcinemaclub.com. Comment on our YouTube channel or email us, 2realcinemaclub@gmail.com. We've had some nice, polite messages on YouTube recently, actually. So nice to get the comments. Always enjoy those next time around. So we're going to go to the popcorn counter next week.
Yeah.
Maybe bring some musical instruments, actually.
Ooh,
and then the week after that, we are going to be watching...
It's Begonia.
I think Bugonia?
I thought it was begonia the first time, which is a flower.
So I think it's supposed to be like a pun on begonia.
Okay.
Begonia. So I think maybe it is. You say it like the flower, but you spell it wrong. Begonia.
Okay. Spell it wrong.
And we will be, once we figure out how to pronounce it, we will be comparing it to
Save the Green Planet, which you've drawn to my attention. It's a 2003 South Korean film.
Yeah, South Korean film.
Upon which Bugonia is based.
Yes. So Begonia, based on a pre-existing property. Who knew? Nice. So we will compare A with B. See how it pans out.
Yeah.
Until then, so join us on the Popcorn Counter next week. Always a pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining us. And we will see you next time.
Oh, nice. Goodbye, everyone. My goodbye, everyone, is pedestrian compared to your see you next time.
I was slowing down, ready for the M. Night Shyamalan take today.
The Shyamalan talk. That'd be a very long podcast. You know.